Hey guys, welcome back to the Chapel Podcast. My name is Bianca Moore, the Spiritual Life Prefect on campus this year, and today we had a very special chapel. It was an interview with a high schooler. Her name is Belle. She is a cancer survivor. She is such a beautiful soul, and we are going to be interviewing her today. So let's go ahead and listen to her message.
Good morning. I'm Mrs. Wheeler. I'm mom to Lakin and Micah Wheeler, who go to school here, and also mom to Bryn, who is Lakin and Micah's younger sister. Bryn, at the age of 12, went to heaven last April after a 5-year battle with cancer. One of Bryn's dreams was to actually be able to attend here for high school. And play volleyball with Coach Bond and Coach Katie. Bryn was one of the biggest Eagle fans, even talked me into buying her an Eagle mask so that she could come and cheer for her sister's volleyball games. During the last year of Bryn's battle, we were fortunate to meet a wonderful family, the Weech family, and Belle, who you're going to hear from today. Belle and Bryn shared a similar spirit of living life to the fullest in the face of a tremendous amount of hardship. I don't know if many of you know this, but September every year is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And I know that a lot of schools bring a lot of awareness to like breast cancer, but I think a lot of schools could do a lot better with bringing awareness to the cancer that affects children and teens. It's not rare anymore, like it was when I was your age. And it's very likely in your school years that you're going to encounter somebody, a teen or a child, that is facing cancer. My hope today is that bringing awareness and hearing Belle's story today, may it help you to desire to love, to support, and to lean in to others walking this journey. It truly takes a village, and many of you have been here to support our family through this. Welcome up, Belle and Miss Bond.
Belle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We are so grateful to just come alongside you in this journey that you have experienced, and thank you for the courage for being here today.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet.
Belle goes to Korean Lutheran. We've got mad respect for their volleyball team. We love battling against Korean, and you're a sophomore, correct?
Yes.
So why don't you start your story, your 8th grade year? Take us back to 8th grade.
So at the end of 8th grade year is ending, I went on spring break to Hawaii. And it was going great, such a fun trip. But towards the end of the trip, I started experiencing some back pain on my upper back and my spine. And I just thought I might have tweaked it, didn't really know what was happening. But as the trip started to end, the pain started to progress. And by the end of the trip, I was waking up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., with very, very intense back pain. And me and my parents didn't know what was going on. We were on the flight home. Everything was okay. I get home, and my parents were like, okay, we're taking you to urgent care. Because it was getting so bad, I'd be tripping and barely being able to stand up. I went to urgent care, and they did some x-rays, said that nothing was wrong. I didn't have anything wrong with me, but there was a lump on my neck. And me and my family had never seen that, so that was a little concerning. The next day, I couldn't even walk up the stairs. I had totally lost my ability to walk. So when I was little, I had something called hip dysplasia, which kind of affects your walking. Your leg is turned out instead of walking straight. My mom maybe thought that it was something acting up with my hip that was affecting my back. So we went to the hip specialist, And the doctor saw me walk for less than like 2 minutes, and he knew something was seriously wrong. So we got sent to Chalk Children's Hospital in Orange. I went there. I got rushed to the emergency room immediately, was in the wheelchair because I totally couldn't walk whatsoever. I was terrified. We started some tests, and a major God moment right as we got there was all the MRIs for my back were totally booked for the night. But all of a sudden, the doctors came in and said, someone is watching over you. The last MRI for the night just opened. We can get you in. So that was a major God moment. God was looking out for me right as all the scary things started. I went in for the MRI. The doctors came back with results and said they found a mass on my back, which is a tumor. And they didn't know if we needed to do emergency surgery or wait the next day to do surgery. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced something really scary in the midst of it. You're like, what is happening? That is how me and my family were feeling. We did not know what these words meant, what a mass was, and everything was go, go, go. The doctors were like, okay, we don't know. We'll be back. We'll come back with information. It was terrifying. The doctors came back and said, well, we have to do surgery, but the surgery rooms are closed for operation, or the operating rooms are closed for construction. And we're like, well, what are we supposed to do? But the doctor, my surgeon, Dr. McGee, he opened it back up because he told me after, if he had not done surgery on my back, I would have been paralyzed for the rest of my life. So I did emergency surgery. I ended around 3 a.m, and the next 6 days over the week, I was in the ICU recovering. The doctors were doing tests, and every day it was a new dose of bad news for my parents. They weren't telling me what was going on because they wanted to keep my mind clean, and I was just focused on recovering. I didn't really know what was going on. I was a lot of medicine, so I don't remember most of it. But I remember my friends and family coming in to pray with me, to worship with me, and to give me gifts. And those joyful moments are what I do remember, which I'm very glad about. Every single day, they said, it is a tumor, it's malignant, and it was growing. And then the last day, we figured out that it was high-risk neuroblastoma cancer that was in my back connected to my neck. So it was very, very high dose. It was all over my body. And neuroblastoma is a very rare cancer. It's rare in general, but if kids do get it, it's usually 5 and under. So at that time, I was 14. So it was extremely rare for my age to get it. On the 7th day, I got sent to the cancer floor at the hospital, and my parents sat me down and explained what was going on. And I wasn't depressed or I didn't cry. I was just very confused and numb. And I kept asking them, how did I get it? What did I do? Is there anything that caused this? And they were telling me, you didn't do anything. And God doesn't punish people by making them sick or having hardships in their life. It is a way for you to lean on God and to trust God when you're in the midst of adversity and all these scary things. And God is like your source of light in the middle of this. And that is what really got me through. I had 18 rounds of treatment, so chemo and immunotherapy. I had 20 rounds of radiation, 2 surgeries, and I finished treatment in August, and then September rang the bell, which signifies like you're done. So yeah, and these past months I've just been recovering, and I'm still in physical therapy. I had to relearn how to walk. Every month I do checkups, but yeah, so I'm doing good now, which is awesome. But I love sharing my story and telling others about what cancer is and all that and how God got me through.
When we chatted last week, one of the first things Belle mentioned was this idea of God moments. So I didn't talk to Jen Wheeler about Belle. I wanted to get to know Belle and just hear her story. And she said, yeah, all of my scans were clear and I couldn't walk. There was something wrong. And my doctor just happened to see the lump on my neck and was like, what is that? And then she goes, then we go and I'm rushed at Chalk and there's no MRIs. But then it opens up. And then nobody's operating. But then they do. And then she goes, and then we had 6 days of bad news upon bad news upon bad news that I know her mom and dad had to bear. But I think about those God moments, right? God is there in the ascent when the doctor sees the lump, when the MRI opens up, when the operating room is available. He's there in the ascent. And then he's there in the descent of the 6 days of descent and descent and descent into a very dark place. And when you were sharing with me last week, it's just this beautiful picture of God on the mountaintop and God in the valleys, and he is with you. And that was just incredible to hear. How has this experience impacted your faith?
It has made my faith grow in multiple ways. When you're in a scary situation like this, I didn't know how to act, but I did know that God was going to get me through it, and my faith grew in enormous ways because of how I leaned on God. And the moments that made the journey more bearable was when I would worship or read my Bible in the midst of a chemo round. That is what made my faith grow. And the little God moments especially made me be like, I know God's looking out for me. And throughout this journey, I was already a strong believer. Me and all my family were already strong believer. But ever since this, it's just definitely grown. And yeah.
So obviously there's beautiful moments of faith, and then there's severe moments of fear. So with regards to fear, what role has that played? What role did it play? Like, it's a very natural, realistic human experience to be afraid of the unknown, or of going from Hawaii to an operating room in a period of days. How has fear impacted?
It definitely impacted me also in a big way. When you think of cancer, I don't know if you've ever known someone who's had cancer or of a family. You see it on TV and all that, but you never think it's going to be you. So when you do get it, it's your whole world is wrecked. And I would go to therapy often to talk about what I was going through in recovery. And one thing my therapist said that really stuck with me was, the what ifs are your biggest fear factor, and what ifs are the back of your mind thoughts that Satan's trying to get in your mind. That what if the medicine doesn't work? What if your scans aren't clear? What if you die? And that was what scared me the most. Not even like the chemo or the side effects. It was the what ifs, and I was afraid of the future of what could come.
And how has your personal verse you shared with me from Joshua, how has that played a role in helping you conquer those fears?
Yeah. So my theme verse throughout this whole journey was Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. And we would see that verse everywhere, I feel like. We would go to the store and it would be on a water bottle, or we would I have a blanket with it. It would just started popping up everywhere. And I would read it in the middle of a chemo round, and it would give me a sense of calmness on my whole body, being like, okay, God, I'm trusting you. I know I'm going to be okay. I'm in your hands. And it really calmed me and gave me the courage to go through another round of treatment and all that.
What advice would you give to someone who has been newly diagnosed with cancer, or to someone who is struggling with loved ones who are battling it? What would you want us to know?
It's a very good question. I would, if I met another cancer patient who's just diagnosed, I would tell them, look around you and see what you have, your family or your friends in God, and be able to really lean on them and talk to them and be able to trust them throughout this journey, even if you don't have a great relationship. Just see what you have and be able to hold tight to that. And I would also tell them that I know some cancer patients who like to be more to themselves and not to like share, to be able to express their feelings and don't keep it bottled up inside, because that is more hurt to yourself, and be able to talk through the hard conversations. And I've met so many amazing families like the Wheelers, and that has just made the journey so much more bearable.
What are things you wouldn't want people to ask? Like, what questions are where you're like, no, don't ask that? Things that, as community and the way we treat one another, what would you want us to not ask, to not assume?
Yeah. So there are definitely a couple of these little triggers that feel like, don't ask. Whoa. So when I was in the middle of treatment, I don't like the question, "Are you okay? How are you?" Because I'm in the hospital. I'm not okay. But I didn't really like questions like that. So I love people to avoid that. I love when people ask me, like, "Can I do anything for you?" Even if they can't come to the hospital, even if they're not close, just asking that shows me that they care, and that means a lot to me. Also, this would make me go crazy and it's not their fault because they don't know, but my friends, a lot of the time, I'd be in the middle of a treatment and I'd FaceTime a lot, and some of them would be like, "Oh my gosh, like today, like school sucked," or like, "My hair looks so bad," and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't have hair. Like, at least you do. And stuff like that. And they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like, I hate school, like homework sucks." And I'm like, at least you get to go to school. I'm like in the hospital stuck. Like, so stuff like that. And just kind of bring awareness to that. And it's not their fault because they're not going through it. But that definitely would bother me a little bit. Yeah. Just questions like that.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the things Belle shared with me last week was when I just said, "What's been the hardest part of your treatment?" She just talked about just the everyday things, like getting to go to school, right? Being online her freshman year was not what she wanted to do. Just everything from, at least you have hair, things that we take for granted, things that we get to enjoy every day are all of a sudden halted.
Yeah.
And they're shifted drastically. And so thank you for just sharing that part on how we can encourage and be tender and sensitive to our brothers and sisters who are going through something that we can't even understand.
Yeah.
This question is so loaded and it sounds so insensitive, but after talking with you last week for an hour, I got off the phone and just was like, she is such a joy. Here I am, and I am encouraged and I am filled up. What have you been grateful for in this ridiculously difficult and heart-wrenching journey?
Yeah. There have been a numerous amount of things that I've been grateful for. Obviously, my family and friends who have stood by my side and have been there, because God got me through this. But the biggest thing that I've been grateful for is the new friendships I gained with other cancer warriors and other cancer families. And that has meant the world to me. I have met so many amazing families who know exactly what I'm going through that I'll talk to my best friend about, or my family, but they won't understand that like the level the other cancer families will, because they've gone through it, had the hard conversations, been through the pain and the loss and the joy. And that is what I am so, so grateful for, is because they'll understand me like no one else on like a whole other level. And it's like an unbreakable bond that like you can't break.
Belle, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you
being here today. After I talked to you last week, I really started just praying on just how I could encourage you, and you steal from the best. So I'm stealing from the words of the Lord. In Psalm 126, it's this really short psalm that is element. And there's this incredible verse, Psalm 126:5, that says, those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. And that does not make sense to me. Like, it's taken me the last few days with a lot of commentaries to start to begin to grasp the power of that verse. Because it doesn't make sense. If you sow sorrow, you should reap sorrow. If you sow joy, you should reap joy. That doesn't make sense to me. It seems like a contradiction. And the more I started studying it, the more I realized, oh, this lament is pointing to someone who sowed great sorrow beyond sorrow. It's pointing to the person of Christ that wept more than we can possibly imagine, that was in deep grief and pain and sorrow. And because he ultimately sowed tears, we get to ultimately reap the harvest of joy. Like, it isn't contradictory that those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. And it's perfectly displayed in the person of Christ, that he came and he wept, and there was sorrow, who brought us joy from it. And when I think about the sacramental life, right, when I think about making the invisible visible, you, Belle, embody that. You have taken and sown just weeks, months, years of tears and sorrow. And you are before us today with your family and friends, reaping joy. And you are pointing us to the person who has strengthened you to do so. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Thank you for making Christ visible in your example, in your joy, in your testimony to us. We are so grateful.
Thank you so much. That means the world. Thank you.
So let me just end us in prayer, and then I think B is coming back up. But thank you all. It's really great to be here. Man, I miss having you guys in my Bible class. But let's go and pray. Lord, you are good. You are good when we don't understand. You are good in the valleys. You are good in the descent when we question and we don't get it. When we think we have to have it all together and we can barely stand. God, you are here. And your Son, Lord, went through sorrow and pain, went through grief, went through devastation and separation, Lord, to bring us the ultimate joy of life with him. We thank you for Belle and her family, for their faith, Lord, just for their response in a situation that is out of their control. Lord, for their response of clinging to you rather than running from you. Lord, for just taking grief, Lord, and shifting it to gratefulness, thankfulness, and ultimately joy. Thank you, Lord, for this time and this space to see the invisible become visible in this beautiful, embodied woman of God. We give you all the glory in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking and enlightening us. So before we start, introduce yourself to us.
Hi, I'm Belle. I'm a sophomore, and I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, all right. So first question, What do you want everyone to take away from what you said today?
That's a very good question. I want everyone to take away from this awareness towards pediatric cancer. Cancer, it's a terrible, horrible thing, but I feel like a lot, which is awesome. I'm very glad that breast cancer gets a lot of awareness and other cancers, but pediatric cancer, I feel like within stores, movies, like everything gets put last.
Yeah.
So I hope that people take away awareness towards the cancer, pediatric childhood cancer. But I also really want them to see that when they're going through a dark time, God is with them and there is light at the end of the tunnel. And God brought me through this journey, and there were little God moments, and that's what made it bearable. And God brought this story out of me, which I love. And I love sharing my story, and I'm so glad that God gave me this story to tell.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize, I want to talk a little bit more about the God moments that you're mentioning. It's just such an amazing reminder, those little things. Last year when I was a sophomore, our school went on a missions trip to Molokai.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was so great. And one of the things that we would do every day during our devotional time is we would go around and share, where did you see God today? And it's just such a great practice just in general. And I found myself seeing God in everything. I never once would expect myself to feel God's presence in the super heavy winds of Molokai. And yet here we are. And now every time that a big gust of wind comes by, it just reminds me of the goodness of God. And it's incredible how he's always just giving us those little reminders.
Exactly.
And it takes us to not just see them and notice them, but really embrace them and just let God love us in those moments.
I love that. That's like so true. So true.
A question that I had, you were saying when your parents first told you that you had cancer, you were kind of numb to it at first. You're like, what is going on? I'm confused. When did it really hit you? Like, oh, I have cancer. This is serious.
That's a really good question. I think it started to hit me when I started going into treatment. The first round was easy, and it actually was really funny. I cried and was more depressed that I couldn't be in my school play than me getting cancer. And I think that was even more effective than numbness. I think I didn't believe it. I think I was like, what? There's no way. And it didn't really hit until I started losing my hair. I shaved my head and then went into the hardest round of chemo. That's when it really hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, this is really happening to me. That was when it like actually hit me and started to affect my mental health and all that.
Yeah, so I know that you were walking with God the entire time, but that's something so difficult. Like, I can't even imagine how hard it must have been, like, getting just, you have cancer, just like that information just on you at the moment.
Yeah.
And like, I know that you obviously were, like, in your Bible, you were worshiping, and that is just such a great way to deal with it. But, like, how did you deal with that?
Yeah. There were, like, moments in the hospital. I would remember my parents would go in with the doctors to have meetings a lot. And there was this one huge meeting that they had to discuss my whole treatment plan, like, of what's going to happen. And I wasn't in it because I didn't want to be in it. They didn't want me to be in it. They were talking about how over the 15 months I would be in treatment, what each month would do, and I didn't need to hear that. And I was in my room alone, and I was making bracelets and just being on my phone, and worship music was playing. That was a big thing, was worship music and Bible. And then little God moments would pop up. And in that moment, there's a lot of service dogs around the hospital, which is so sweet, and I love that they do that, and I've become close with a couple of them and their owners. And this lady walks in the room, and she goes, hi. She's like, can I come in? I have a service dog. Like, can we come and say hi? And I was like, absolutely. I was like, I'm alone with my Starbucks matcha, just, chilling. Right? I was like, please, I need company. And she comes in, and her name was Lisa. And she's like, oh, I haven't seen you before. Like, what's your name? And I was like, I'm Belle. And she had a little King, like, Charles dog, like the little adorable, like, lady from Lady and the Tramp dog.
Oh, my gosh.
Her name was Mabel Grace, and she popped on my bed, and I just started, like, petting her and stuff. And the owner started talking, and she was like, like, what are you here for? Just kind of started asking me questions, and I told her, and she was like, wow. She goes, my daughter had nothing like you. She's like, but something like yours. Her daughter, like, got sick and had pneumonia and was in a life and death situation. It was really, really scary. And her daughter, like, I don't remember if she, like, passed away or something happened, and they had a big prayer moment in the room with her husband and stuff, and the next morning her daughter was alive.
Oh my gosh.
It was just crazy, and we were talking about that, and God came up, and we had this whole conversation about God, and not that there are a ton of believers in the hospital, and a lot of my nurses I'm actually the closest with are believers.
Yeah.
But in a hospital like that, not a lot of the doctors are. And that's why they're very blunt and very like, you have cancer, see you later. Like, that's why they're very like that. And that's why, like, when they do have faith, it means a lot more. And it's way more comforting. And that therapy dog owner, she had faith. And while my parents were in that meeting, we had a whole conversation about faith and about God and how God's going to get me through this. She walks out of my room. And at that exact moment, my mom was coming out to take a break, and she just needed to cry from the meeting. She ran into her and the dog, and then just got to pick up the dog and just, like, hold her.
Oh my God.
And she didn't know that I just had a meeting with her. And she came into my room, my mom, to say hi. And I was like, I just met the sweetest lady who I had a faith talk about, and the dog. And my mom was like, that's the dog I met. So it was like this, like, major God moment. And it was definitely moments like those. God showed me joy and in the midst of chaos. And that's what really made me brought me through it, and what put my trust in God.
Yeah. I am a huge, like, advocate for trusting in God.
Yeah.
I have been through a lot, like, very similar to you, not cancer, but I've been in and out of the hospital several times as a kid.
Really?
Yeah. So I do know how it feels to not know and to be wondering what's going to happen. Am I going to come out of here okay, or am I going to come out of here completely different?
Yeah.
And I do know that, especially hearing you talking about all of the MRIs were closed and the operating rooms were closed. And I was hearing God, and he was just saying that he closes doors, he closes opportunities, not so that he makes you nervous and then, like, oh my gosh, God finally showed up. But he could have easily made all of those MRIs open, but he did it for his glory.
Exactly.
And because all of those MRIs were closed and one opened, the very last one, at the very last second, it opened, and it reminds me of Lazarus. Because at the very, very, like, after 3 days, people would tend to believe, okay, like, resurrection's not an option now. It's been 4 days.
Yeah.
The fourth day, the last day, God showed up. And the very last appointment got canceled, and he showed up for you.
I love that. That's so good.
And the surgeries, too, the operating rooms, you said that your doctor opened up from construction, like those operating rooms, right? That's just so incredible. And it's just God's glory is just seeping through all of that. And honestly, it's like it was all over the MRI table. And once you laid on that table, it just got seeped all into you. And that's where you truly shine. And you're just such an advocate for those God moments and just really trusting in him and really seeing him in the really difficult moments.
That means, like, a lot. You are so sweet. Thank you. That really, I'm going to cry. That's so sweet.
Girl.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
So if anyone would want to get in contact with you, like, outside of church or want to ask you questions, meet up with you, how would they be able to do that?
I have an Instagram. It's at, I think it's Belly Belle. All lowercase, it's Belly Belle. So I have the Instagram. I love to do YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel. It's just called It's Belle. It should pop up there. But yeah, on my YouTube, I do vlogs, school vlogs, and I did a lot. I filmed every chemo round, everything. So if you ever want to come check that back out, I have all my whole cancer journey on there too. And that's what really inspired me to do YouTube and all that more was my cancer journey. But yeah, so Instagram, my cancer journey, I would love to meet any of you. But yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you so much for coming, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK-12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.